Everyone, thank you, Angel. We are ready to go. It's wonderful to have you on board on Hump Day. More importantly, I suppose, it be St. Patrick's Day. If you're Irish, come into the parlour. There's a welcome there for you. I'm sure absolutely nobody in the room knows what I'm talking about, apart from the fact that it's St. Patrick's Day, of course. But that was the words from an Irish song. And I can't even remember what it was. If you're Irish. Happy St. Pat's Day if you're Irish. And I hope it's, well, and if you've been up for a while, you're probably in no condition to talk to me or even hear what I'm saying. Because they do celebrate the Irish, I've got to tell you, St. Pat's Day. It's a big, big thing. Their national day, of course. And it's on for young and old. Green beer all over the place. I've had a few green beers in my day. Had a few Guinnesses in my day. And boy, oh boy, if you're not a strong-willed person and one that can sustain a fairly long session of drinking, I would steer clear of St. Patrick's Day because they do it in style, got to tell you. There'll be some sore heads around town tomorrow, without doubt. Anyways, a little bit of news for you today. Hi, Sweet. That is Ash and I had a fairly lengthy meeting yesterday after the show, and we decided that we might add some filters. Already, of course, we're updating the journal for the pound breakout trade, and we decided that we might add a few filters. And top of the discussion, and we both agreed to this, was that if there had already been a breakout of the session prior, then we would choose not to take the trade. That, of course, is the case today, and you'll probably remember me telling you yesterday, when this was the last candle prior to London session, that, gee whiz, I hope we don't get taken in short here. And there's very, very good reason for that, because the range had already been broken. And if you're trying to catch a range break, why would you then go and trade? So we're going to add that filter. So today there will be no trade because the range, which is effectively here, has already been broken. And, you know, it makes perfect sense for that to be the case. And I'll be setting up a breakout trade for you a little bit later in relation to the FOMC statement, which will be announced, of course, well into the early morning most of our times. They've changed time, so I think it's probably, I don't know, 5 a.m. or something for me. Could be wrong. I'll have to look that one up. But we're in a pretty good position to take advantage of that, and I'll go through that one a little bit later. But for now, we'll stick with the pound, and we will say there will be no trade today. And again, if you just joined us in the room, the reason for that is Ash and I had a decent old meeting yesterday, updating the journal on this, and we decided that, well, why don't we trade it as a breakout rather than a continuation or reversal of the previous session. So in other words, the idea was always to trade the breakout of the range, and that range is clearly today this area here, and it's already happened. So we're not going to catch that breakout because it's done. So that therefore is our first filter that we're adding for the UK session breakout trade. No trade today because we've already broken out. Now, if I was a pound trader today, where would I like to be trading? On this evidence, I'm not 100% sure. To be frank, you can see that the pivots are very, very close together once again. And you can also see that we've been up and down and up and down. So this is more of a range now than anything else, in my humble opinion. And the fact that the range on our intraday charts has been broken on the hourly, we won't be trading that at all. So I'd want to see some evidence to suggest that that we're going somewhere else. Don't forget, of course, as I alluded to earlier, it is FOMC day, so there'll be a statement overnight. The market tends to either do one of two things, and generally the thing that it tends to do when it's FOMC day is go into its shell until such times as that announcement is made. It's not always the case. We do have shadow boxing, John. You could be right. It's not always the case. The market can sometimes try to preempt and get ahead of the Fed announcement, as I was trying to do yesterday. Go through those trades now. On what did we trade yesterday? We traded euro dollar, and it looked like we were on our way with euro dollar. I think that was TP2 there. We hit TP1, but it very, very quickly turned around and went whoosh straight below everything. Daily pivot, weekly pivot, bottom of the range. It was all happening for euro dollar yesterday. And yeah, I was a little bit surprised at that move. Obviously, something happened later well, I don't know what it was. I was in a meeting, as I said. So I really wasn't taking too much notice, except that I saw it zoom down and, oh, what was that? And there we ended up. We're bang back on that level now. These lines that you see in my chart are there for the FOMC breakout. Again, because we're trading a range. If we go outside that range, I won't be looking to trade the breakout. If we come back, however, and I'll explain this to you a little bit later in more depth, but that to me is the effective range of the week thus far. So this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm happy with that because it's only, 65 pips. That's pretty cool. 65 pip range is very good. But if we are to trade the breakout of the FOMC statement, then we need to be in the middle of this range because the potential for whipsaw is high at that time. And we don't want to be sitting here, for instance, just inside the range, get taken into the short, and then the whipsaw takes us back out very, very quickly. So that's not the idea. The idea is to be in the middle of the range, and believe it or not, the weekly pivot is smack dang in the middle of that range. And I've put a little rectangle around the area that I would suggest price needs to be in at the announcement time. At the time the statement is released, I would like price to be in that zone. So I think I'll give you the levels for that. 119.40 to, well, daily pivot to DR1 really, to 119.10, say. So there's a 30 pip range in there. I would like price to be in somewhere in that zone before the FOMC breakout. I'll give you the entry levels for that just before we close today. But bear in mind that if price does sneak out here and increase the range, then I will probably, I'll make a decision on that. If it comes way down here, I won't look to trade it because, again, the breakout of the range would already have occurred. And that's not what we're looking to do. Okay, so again, those of you just joined us in the room, welcome aboard once again. Repeating that Ash and I had a long meeting yesterday and we decided to add a filter to this breakout trade. If it's already broken, the range is already broken, and that's the effective range. It's already broken, we don't take the trade because guess what? We were trying to catch the breakout. If it's already happened, hello. So yes, we've now added that filter. We won't be trading that today. And yesterday was exactly the same. As I said, we didn't want to be taken into the short, but we were, and the race had already been run. You know, there's the range there, already been broken. So you're chasing your tail, and you know your odds of success, if you get triggered short here, are very, very low. As we continue to say, you know, if you must pay attention intraday wise to ATRs and things of that, well, not things of that nature, ATRs, because price doesn't want to move 200 pips in a day. It just doesn't. That's not the nature of currencies. If there's a reason, if there's a fundamental reason, then absolutely it can and will happen. But if it's just a run-of-the-mill day, then you're going to see this more often than you're going to see this. Need to bear that in mind when you're trading intraday. And I bang on about it all the time, don't I? DR1, DS1. They're the sweet spots. That's where you want to be trading intraday. So let's move on to the euro, for instance, and not talk about the breakout, but talk about how I would like to trade it today. Well, it's pretty clear to me. I've got a trade line here that has been broken, and it's been decisively broken. Now, as some of you guys would know, I don't trade the first candle of London. And there's very, very good reason for that. The reason for that is that I continued to get hammered when I was trading euro dollar, because that's all I used to trade. I used to get hammered every time I did it, so I stopped doing it, and that improved my bank account dramatically, I've got to tell you. So today, although that bar is particularly interesting because it is a genuine slingshot dominator, I would not be looking to trade that. So I would be expecting some opportunity if we got back above that trade line. But if we don't, then it's probably bye-bye euro. There may be an opportunity on a bigger time frame a little bit later, maybe on an H4 as a break and retest. But again, you've got to watch the ATR. So if we're down here somewhere, we're asking it to really stretch, aren't we? Untested daily pivot above us. My preference is most definitely to trade this to the upside. If I get the chance to do that, happy days. It may not happen. The euro's in a bit of a very, very tenuous situation, in particular against the US dollar. Now, what the market does with the US dollar prior to the FOMC statement is anybody's guess. But at the moment, we've got a range that we can contend with, and I will, as I said, update that as we go out through the day. Top of the morning to you, Ash.
Hello, mates. How's things?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
Awesome. Yeah, very good, mate. Very good.
You haven't got a green beer yet, have you?
A green beer?
St. Patrick's Day.
Is it?
Yes.
Of course it is. Of course it's St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, I mean, it was the accent was throwing me a bit.
Well, it probably sounds more like Hindi than it does Irish.
Irish, yeah. Yes, it is St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, good point. I wish I could play. I wish I could play something by the House of Pain.
Yeah,
not only would we get banned.
Yep.
But
we won't. But the boss will.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we probably will as well.
Or the Pogues, actually. Maybe the Pogues. House of Pain are a little bit more coarse in their lyrics, but I do like the House of Pain. But yeah, but something by the Pogues might be kind of cool.
Can you drink Guinness? John's demanding that we have a Guinness.
Oh, do you know what? I love Guinness. I'd say a good Guinness, that is.
Yeah, it's got to be the right stuff, isn't it?
It's got to be the right stuff. Yeah, but
that stuff in the can. Have you had those ones in the can that got that little
widget?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so good. No. No, didn't feel well the next day on that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's got to be thick. It's got to be nice and thick and creamy.
Yeah, it's got to take about 20 minutes to pour. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have a couple of whiskeys, a couple of Jamesons while they're pouring it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the Guinness, isn't it? It's got to be served up right. But yeah, I would have Guinness if I could, mate. I'd be with you on that one. Can you get it where you are?
Sorry?
Can you get it where you are, Guinness?
Guinness, yeah, oh yeah. There's Irish pubs everywhere in Australia. Absolutely.
Oh, mate.
Actually, it's a very good one in the middle of Hobart. I won't say I've frequented it, but I've been there a few times and had a jolly old time.
Oh, I bet you have.
Yeah, I've got a few Irish mates, and they'll be having a wonderful time today, I'm sure.
Well, I want to bring your attention to Bitcoin, mate.
Okay.
Because I think Bitcoin's ready to turn.
Ooh.
I've been kind of waiting for this to happen, and I've been waiting for a signal that this might happen. And I wonder whether it's just about on its way. John, good morning. Lewis, good morning, and everybody else, good morning too. I know it's probably not morning where you are, but it is where I am. Look at this head and shoulders. Really clean head and shoulders pattern so far. And I wonder whether that, you know, this as I say, this might be on the turn. I really do feel for anybody that's got in, you know, somebody's got in at the highs at just over the 6,000 mark. They're now down 10% of their holding. Now I don't know whether, you know, what that kind of triggers, and I don't know how deep or even whether this will break down, but it looks pretty negative. And look just in here as well. So just looking through some of the details of this particular chart, we've got this head and shoulders pattern. So we've got this higher low here, higher low here, higher low here, higher low here, and a higher high here. Then we have this lower low in comparison to this area here. Maybe I should be using the pen. And we got this lower low at this particular point, and there's a few other things with this. So we got this could be the first significant aspect of this, and it does come right along the neckline of the the neckline of the head and shoulders. So it's going to need to break that down. But obviously, this is my favorite point to try and take a trade. But look at this, you know, push to the upside, this shooting star here, and then a big push to the downside. Sorry, it's getting a bit messy in there, but that is suggesting that that we have an evening star within the head and shoulders pattern, and then add to that this trend line break as well. You know, we've got a trend line break there. What we have is almost multiple indicators or multiple indicators on the price action that this thing is starting to break down. And then you look at this as well on the neckline and on the shoulder line. Sorry, the shoulder line is also broken down, so it needs to reclaim this area here if it's going higher. So I'll just draw the other lines in. There's your neckline there. So the first thing that you'd want to see is it come down to this point. Now I don't know whether it breaks through, but there's certainly a reversal pattern in here, you know, showing that that it might be under strain. Now the reason that I would suggest that this one's significant is that Bitcoin is potentially going to be under stress relatively soon. Now if we look at these on the daily, this
remind me to ask you a question when you're done.
Yeah, no problem, mate. This here. Okay, this here I think is quite a significant bar. Gap to the upside, closing near the lows. We got a hanging man here, we got a hanging man here, another hanging man here. So the hanging man is like, if you can imagine that noose around the neck and then the legs kind of flailing down. So that's why it's called a hanging man. So we've got the hanging man here. So where the hammer is near the lower end of a trend, with the anatomy of this where it looks like a hammer is a hanging man, and these are very bearish. These are significant, and or they can indicate bearish price action because they are because they are associated quite a lot with moves to the upside. People will use them, you know, as areas to go long and use a stop. So when they're broken, they tend to break down, you know, relatively swiftly. This one hasn't as yet, but we do have. Or these haven't, I should say, as yet.
Beautiful
but we do
ball
have.
trap if it plays out, isn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, absolutely. And you know, it does need to break down. When you look at this on the daily, it does need to break down more significantly. But I wonder whether, you know, I'm not sure what the patterns end up looking like with Bitcoin, having not studied it quite enough. But if you look at what could be going on here, this could be a little right shoulder here, sorry, left shoulder here, right shoulder, and then maybe we see something like that, which does drive it, is going to drive it potentially lower and then back up again first, if that was to play out. But I'm not sure whether Bitcoin is, you know, the kind of instrument. Looks like an M topping pattern as well, actually. If you look at this here. I'm not sure whether Bitcoin, you know, is the kind of thing that does kind of, you know, carve out signals in a way that that provides us with longer term head and shoulders patterns so much. You know, if it's going to tank, it's probably going to come down pretty hard. So this could have a look of an M topping pattern. So it looks a bit toppy here. Now we know that we should be on the lookout for it because the move to the upside, it's overbought in this area. You know, you look at these bars as well. Last month as well, quite a big wick, and there's just nothing to support on the monthly chart. There's nothing to support it in this area. So it does suggest a big move down. Now or a move down anyway. That move down may not be that deep. You know, we might get to a situation or a scenario where we get something that comes to, I don't know, possibly there. You know, would be last month's close, or it could come all the way back down to here. You know, and difficult to kind of like find exactly where that's going to get to. But if we draw in some lines on the weekly and the monthly as well, sorry, the weekly and the daily as well, the weekly would suggest that that it could get down to this point possibly. Should have drawn a horizontal one there. So there's that level. There's that level. You know, these would be the levels of interest for me. There's this level here. Possibly even that level there, which is down at 25, 23. I mean, that does sound a bit crazy, but I have to draw in another line here. Another one here. And this one looks like the most interesting, doesn't it? Because you got the 45 area here, which is, you know, that's going to be another 20% drop to that particular point. Now that's the point that I'd be getting the most interested. You know, you'd probably want to draw a few fibs on this as well, just to kind of see what that would suggest. Actually, the fib suggests down to 40. Yeah, go on, mate.
And where's the measured move take you on your existing head and shoulders?
I mean, not that far, but that's a really good point. Let's see. So if you were to trade this head and shoulders, you'd be looking at that as your. Let me draw it with this instead. You'd be looking at this as your neckline.
Would you consider the next swing low up from there on your left shoulder as the neckline? That one?
Yeah, I think you could. Actually, let's do it there because that'd be a little bit more conservative. Let's do that one there.
It also gives you a lower right shoulder, which to me tends to suggest if it does break, it's going to break hard.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. So, I mean, it doesn't, in fact, that's quite interesting. You know, when you draw it to that particular point, that looks like it leads us right into here. So that would suggest 50,000. The pattern, the way it is, suggests 50,000. And then you'd have to switch time frames because, you know, after it's down to that level there, then you'd be interested to see what does it then start looking like on the dailies. You know, if it started to come down to this point, what would it then start looking like on the dailies there? That would lead us there. That is a good spot actually, around about 51,000. That's what the head and shoulders is suggesting right now. And if this was, you know, something that people could trade, then you'd be looking at maybe putting your stops at this point here, or that point there, and it would depend on the reward. The reward is around about looks like $500 to the downside for reward. Is it as much as that? Actually, no, it's $3,000 to the downside for reward.
I'm going to say they don't get out of bed for $500 Bitcoin.
No. I mean, this is the problem with Bitcoin. You know, we're talking about such huge numbers that people kind of get almost romanced by the number rather than the percentage, which is much more important because actually, if you were to enter this trade with a stop in too loose an area, you're only really looking at a 1-to-1. You know, that's it's two. Actually, no, yeah, that would be a 2-to-1. That would be a 2-to-1, and you could be looking at maybe a 3.5, 4-to-1 if you take that trade. Which we're looking at 4-hour charts. So, you know, I mean, that would be pretty good. We know how volatile this can be, suggesting to me that this is probably also banking on the Fed. You know, is it a dollar story more than a Bitcoin story? Possibly. But you know, we are looking for some downside. I think anyway, we're looking for downside with Bitcoin. I have been for a while, not being keen to get into the move as it is. So Ash, do hanging man patterns usually result in going down? It's not that they usually result in going down, but I suppose if you think about it as a and I don't think Jeff uses this, but if you think about it more as a kind of a slingshot kind of entry, where you are entering at the low of the hanging man with a stop at the high of the hanging man, what they can suggest is that the move to the upside has got tired, because you've had that you've had the big move down. So if we consider what's happened with the hanging man, it opens, it comes down, but recovers the downward movement, and it gets back to the high. But they can suggest just a bit of exhaustion in a move. And if you're entering here, the likelihood is that there will probably be stops here. That's why the hanging man can be quite a good entry point, because most people will look at these bars as nice, clean entry bars to try and take a trade. So they'll be entering at the high with a stop at the low. So it can trigger quite a few stops coming down. So they can be quite useful, when it comes down to it. Look at this one here. There's a hanging man there. Now, I don't think that would have resulted in too much, but it would have. And really, when you're looking at a hanging man, it's a signal rather than an indication of a long protracted move. But if you were to consider a hanging man like this, and you were somebody that wanted to just trade on bars, then you'd look at this on a longer term time frame. This hanging man on a longer term time frame, right here. And you'd be looking to enter the session afterwards, but on a 15, you wouldn't want to probably get down to an hourly. It wouldn't be enough. But on a 15, you might be looking at it. So if you see a hanging man on a daily, then you'd be looking to enter it on an hourly. You can utilize the time period. You see it on a weekly, then you can start looking on a 4 hourly. Where was it? It was here. So if you're looking at this on a 15-minute chart, and you know that this range in here is the hanging man, you're looking to enter afterwards. Now, if you were to do the whole range of the hanging man, it's around about a 1-to-1. So you have to kind of like look at it with the information it's giving you, which is just a bar, and you can do that right the way through right the way through any chart that you want. If you look at a 4 hourly situation here, a 4 hourly bar, now you want it in the right place. But look at this here. This is a low down here. Now, one way that you can trade this 4 hourly bar is just because it's at the low, you could just trade the high of the 4 hourly bar and just go to put your entry there with a stop at the low. But what you can do instead is use it to suggest that there is a 4 hour move coming. And that 4 hour move is at this stage, it's suggested a 4 hour move to the upside. Now, if there's only 4 hours of move coming, I don't want to be entering on a 4 hour bar. I'd want to enter on a 15. And if we look at it on the 15, look at what it provided. As it retraces back on the 15, you get your entry here. And again, you'd be looking at the range of the bar as the potential move, and it gets to around about the range, and that's the top end of the range. So that would be a 1-to-1 right there. And what I'm talking about is a potential trading system. That would be a potential trading system. I haven't talked about the Ftse as yet, Lewis. I will discuss the Ftse. I'll discuss it because there's not a lot to discuss. But the Ftse continues to push higher right now. I think it's getting a bit hampered by the potentially what's going on with the pound. But this is this would be a system, but the system would have to be the range of the bar. So you're really looking at bars at turning points. So the bars in the middle wouldn't be quite as useful potentially. They might be. You might be able to come up with a system where these bars are in the middle. But look at this most recent here. Now that looks like a bar at the high, right? So if you looked at this bar here, what you'd be looking for again is because it's on a 4 hour, you're looking at a system where you're going to be entering at the low on retracement on a 15-minute time period with a stop at the high, and you're just looking at a 1-to-1 scenario. So your 1-to-1 scenario is going to be There's your range. It retraced here. So you'd be entering at this point here. And you'd be looking for it to get down to that point before it comes back. Oops. You'd be looking for it to get down to that one for your 1-to-1, and it looks good, doesn't it? Because that's where your support level is. I mean, it's, you know, there's obviously sort of other aspects that you could involve in this one, but I don't think you'd be, as I say, I don't think you'd be wanting to do any more than that. Yes, you could have a system where you take profit and try and trail, and you'd have to test out, you know, how reliable it is. But it's but you know, that is trading a bar. So when we're looking at bars, we need to make sure that we put them in the right context. All we're looking for is a move with a bar. A better way to trade for a longer sweeping move is a pattern, because with a pattern you've got a cluster of bars and a cluster of an area. So when you do measured moves on a pattern, then obviously you're going to get much more of a protracted move. Okay, so the Ftse. Ftse is
I do trade that bar a lot, actually, but it's got to be, as you just said, it's got to be in context for me, and it's got to have at least one mate. In other words, it's got to have a low test bar on the same trade line for me to trade it. Yeah,
I mean, I think it, you know, from what you and I were talking about yesterday, and I don't know how deeply you went into what we talked about yesterday.
Well, really, I just said that we'd added a filter, and that filter was if the breakout's already happened, then we're not going to trade it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, oh, this is interesting. I'm just going to check something in a second. Yeah, you know, we because of what we did yesterday, we could come up with all sorts of systems, really, where we can start really breaking things down and looking at bars and whatever else. And maybe we should have a session where we just look at how to come up with a system. Maybe that might be quite a cool thing to do. Anyway, so Ftse 100. Now, yes, the Ftse 100 also in a head and shoulders pattern, and it looks pretty good up here, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know what the pivots are suggesting. Let's have a look. Yeah, under that daily pivot, looks like we're probably going to grab this this one down here. This looks tradable. Let's do a bit more work on this one and see whether it is. It doesn't look like there's a lot of room there. So really, the cluster in here is probably this. You know, from that point there to the high point there. That's the cluster, which suggests. A 35. Yeah, well, that would probably get you to the weekly pivot. The Ftse's another one because of where it kind of sits in its trend. It's one that could be looked at for downside. And again, you know, it's a Fed scenario, Fed situation. So I don't think we can get too kind of drawn into too many of the moves with it. The one that I thought was really interesting the other day was natural gas. And that's because of this longer term move here, which looks like it's there. Now, this does suggest it could come down a little bit lower, but we're pretty close to the area here on natural gas. I'm not sure whether people are able to trade this, but there's the inverted head and shoulders. So we're looking on a weekly chart here, the inverted head and shoulders on natural gas. We've come down, gap lower, 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 lower. So, you know, this thing is volatile, which makes it a really interesting instrument to trade. On the dailies, you can kind of see that that there could be. Yeah, it looks like we should be aiming for 2.442 really before kind of getting into this. So natural gas, I think, is another interesting potential market to get involved in. Looks like, as I say, we need to come down a little bit lower. And with something like this, we really would want to look at. We'd want to make sure that we looked at COT and seasonality. So you probably have some bars to look through. I appreciate, mate. So some charts to look through. So let me just do this very, very last thing. Okay, where are we? Here we are. because you'd want to make sure that you had more probably than just the price action. We can get really aware of things that are going on with currencies, because we can just read up on what's happening with the economies of each country and how it relates back to the currency. But when it comes down to natural gas, we'd have to make sure that we were on top of any kind of data releases that were out there. So let's just have a look and see if that's on here. Heating or natural gas. Here we go. Looks like there's a little bit of buying on the near term, or in the near term, I should say, for natural gas. Little tick up there, but nothing really significant. We'd want to see this, and you can see that that it does provide us with a bit of a roadmap when it gets to the very, very highest point. There was wrong there. Was wrong here for quite some period, but eventually it did actually give us a decent move to the upside. But we are in that kind of lower band down here, and it's suggesting actually more. If we take the net down, suggesting more that the buying pressure is not coming in, the selling pressure is easing off a little bit. So we really, with this stuff, you can see that when you can kind of get these really big moves in something like natural gas, it's because there are buyers that are coming in and the sellers are starting to separate. Whereas we're not really seeing that here. We want to see that sell line crossover. We want to see the buying line kind of going up. So so natural gas looks a little bit early, which is good because we probably want it a little bit lower as well. And if we bring in the seasonal data here, then what we're looking at is a potential bottom around about the the start of March time, which is where we are near. We are seeing that, and natural gas is one of those things. Is because it's a commodity based instrument that we can trade. Then the seasonal aspect is going to be much more prevalent than many other things. So one to watch. I'm not sure if people can trade natural gas, but have a look at natural gas, have a look at natural gas stocks, and I think that that you might be in pretty good shape if you do.
Infusion's got natural gas.
Does it have it?
Pretty sure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you can trade natural gas on that. So you're looking at, in my opinion, anyway, looking for it to come down to around about 140. 2.43. 2.43, 2.42 before looking for buy signals. Doesn't mean you buy it there, just before you look for buy signals. That would be my suggestion. Fed out later, mate, which is going to make this market pretty quiet, as we can see. I thought the moves in the euro were quite significant, and we're seeing the euro looking to attempt to break down against the pound, but it hasn't really got there yet. I thought the euro sing was really interesting and could be one to potentially trade to the downside.
Euro sing, interesting.
Yeah,
I've got an order on dollar sing myself.
Oh, have you to the upside?
No, downside.
The downside, yeah. I wonder whether Euro Sing might be of interest. And you looking at it on the weekly, then we can see that there is this trend line here that looks like it's broken down.
Yeah, that looks good.
And
you've got a double top, and you've got a lower high and a candle that you can trade. You could already be in that.
Yeah. So this is a weekly. Now, if we break this down to some of the shorter term time frames. What we also have here is it's a bit scruffy, but there looks like a little break of a trend line here as well, and you probably want to tighten it up there. So as that one comes back up to this particular point, I think that one could be of interest. And when you look at this on a with pivots, look at the pivots here: weekly, daily, under the monthly, and the other thing with this is, forget but the price action. If you were just looking at pivots, you've got a monthly, which is above the weekly, which is above the daily. So these are all in the right order. So it looks to me like a pretty good signal for downside. And here, what we were looking at with Bitcoin was an evening star. This is a failed morning star. I call it a false dawn. Because you do have this small bar down here, which should generate a decent move back into the body of the bearish bar. That didn't materialize. you know, and now it's looking a little bit weak here. So you know, the Euro Sing would be my choice. You know, if I was looking to trade any of them, the Euro Sing would be something that I'd be interested in to look for downside.
Fair enough. I'll give you a case for dollar Sing in a minute, but
Yeah,
dollar against anything at the moment is a little bit difficult because of Fed, which is upcoming. But you know, I always try to get ahead of it if I can. I tried on the euro yesterday, didn't work. Well, it was a break-even trade because it went up, and they didn't like it up there. That's for sure.
Yeah, would we go through the Fed breakout trade?
I've kind of set it up,
yeah,
but I'm waiting to see the result of the next hour. Well, before we close the show, I'll go back to it and give the parameters for it.
Okay, all right.
Lewis is suggesting that you like exotics, mate.
I just quite like anything that is providing an opportunity to be honest. I like looking around. The thing is, I'm quite bearish on the euro because of the fundamentals. You know, the fundamentals of the euro just don't stack up for me. I think, as I said yesterday, Christine Lagarde's or the day before, Christine Lagarde's tone was really negative. I thought it was really negative. And you know, when it comes down to whether it should, you know, provide the euro with moves to the upside, it was just pretty negative. And aside from aside from a message to say we might have to change, it sounded more kind of with a defeatist tone. Like she was like if they had to change their policy, it'd be because they were defeated rather than because that's what they wanted to do. Because the policy is definitely leave things where they are and accommodate further if necessary. So she was talking the euro down. Now, I don't know. I'm not. When I say that she was quite negative and bearish, that might have been her plan all along. You know, that might be the way that she wants to do things. Because one thing she can do,
central bankers.
Yeah, exactly. Because one thing they can do to kind of boost their economic output is by weakening the currency, and you can do that in a number of ways. But one brilliant way to do it is by rhetoric. And I tell you, the king of that was Mario Draghi. He was absolutely brilliant. You know, people would react on what he said, and then all of a sudden you'd kind of like, you know, you'd get this tanking in the euro, which meant that you get a kind of boost in production, you get a boost in people wanting to buy stuff from the European Union because it's a bit cheaper. So I thought that she was. I'm not sure whether she's quite as. She has quite the gamesmanship that Mario Draghi does, because I haven't really worked out Christine Lagarde quite yet. She almost seems too stand up to do it. You know, she almost seems too honest to play the same games. But she might just be very, very good at it. She might be better at it than him in a way because she don't really know what she's doing.
She should.
What's that? Sorry.
She knows what she's doing, but you're suggesting that we don't know what she's doing yet.
I know. Yeah. Well, exactly. Like you know, she might just have a better poker face than Mario Draghi. I think the jury's still out a little bit with Christine Lagarde with this particular job, though.
Yes, I agree. I think I can't speak for the major players, but they seem to be disappointed.
Oh, really?
The market in general seems to be disappointed in her performance, I believe.
Yeah. Mario Draghi was always going to be a tough act to follow. And Christine Lagarde was, you know, when she was appointed, I thought, geez, you know, they really have gone out for a big hitter here. They've gone for a big name.
Yeah.
And you know, in economic terms, but things like that don't always work out. You know, you sort of like you almost sometimes better off going to the next generation and seeing if somebody else can come in. But you know, I could be completely wrong about her. Not that I'm making a judgment on her performance because I don't know what she's trying to get, but she doesn't seem to want what's happening to be happening. from what I read. And as I say, it might be that everything's playing out exactly as she wants it. But she seemed quite defeated to me the other day, or a little bit like things were getting a little bit out of control. And they could get further out of control. And it was really about inflation, the inflation story. And we haven't seen, let's have a quick look at gold. We haven't seen gold really take off as yet, but it's kind of getting close, to breaking out. It's not there yet. We can look at it on a chart that you guys can trade if you like instead. Let me see. In fact, look at gold against the pound. Now this one. The reason I say look at it against the pound is that I think this is probably through its neckline now. Against the pound, it looks like it might well be starting to provide a higher low here through a trend line. What I thought was interesting, what I think is interesting about gold is it's still not sure what to do. Because those bond yields aren't, they're from what I saw, what are they currently at? 162. They're not really kind of they're being suppressed at this stage, and that's what we're all after. What is Jerome Powell going to say about yield control, about the yield curve? Because he could really boost gold, or gold might just collapse from here, might still have a problem from here, and I'm invested in gold, and I've got some more to invest. And my question is, do I kind of go further in here, or do I wait for a bit lower? Because what I want, of course, is for it to come down a bit lower. I'd like to get it down to at least $1,500, about an
pivot
ounce.
Would be nice. Give you another higher low in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about trading. I'm actually talking about actually buying the stuff.
Right. Yep. I mean, that looks like an aversion point, that last low.
This one here. Yeah. You got that there, and I mean, this is against the pound, so it's it's a completely different message. If you look at it against the dollar instead, then we're right on top of the neckline. So the dollar managing to hold its ground, as we see here with the dollar index, it's managing to kind of like hang on to what it's got. To that move to the upside. I thought the dollar was going to just drift a little bit lower, which hasn't happened yet. I was looking for it to come back down and test this area in here. And considering how weak the dollar's been, I think that I thought there'd be a pretty good chance of that happening. And that line just looks better to me than this one. Touch there, touch there, touch there. So this looks better to me than this point here. Might
be a bit clearer tomorrow at this time. We might have a far better idea. Yeah,
50% retracement there as well, mate. So anywhere around about 91, I would have thought the dollar would be of interest for the buyers to come in. But if Jerome Powell pushes it down and it breaks down below the 91, then I think that the dollar could be looking. We might be looking for significantly lower with the dollar, particularly if it breaks down this. And it could happen, This is where you kind of look at charts and you say, well, I could trade the technicals here. I could be after a technical trade, but you have to know that that there's going to be something fundamental, that something that's going to be said, which is actually going to drive your trade. So how you interact with the knowledge of that information is really the potentially the difference between success and failure.
I think what Powell says today is the course of the dollar for the next, where are we? Until the end of May, maybe.
Yeah, you could be right, mate.
Wow, that looks so good to me. That's a short.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think this is the thing with it. I mean, you literally could draw a number of levels here and say, well, actually, you know what, we are. You could make a case really either way. There's probably a even deeper trend line if you went up a little bit further. In fact, I wouldn't want to go up any further. I like that where it is at the minute. Let me just see what. Yeah, because that looks like the pattern there. Almost looks like this is the head The whole thing is the head, and we'd have to get up to this particular point here to create a decent shoulder, which would be much better because it's on a weekly chart.
Looks
And
like
actually,
a
look,
classic retracement to me, mate. That's what it looks like.
yeah, look at that level. Look at that level. It looks 94.50. Let's call it, just to round it up a little bit. Looks like a decent point for dollar to get to, if it gets through this level.
That's the question.
Yeah, and the other thing that you've got here, and we're talking about this on potentially on a weekly chart as well. You've got this this flag. You've got this bear flag. I mean, it's not ideal drawing a bear flag on a weekly chart, but you do have. Mate. It's still saying the same thing, isn't it? It's still sort of like getting into a range, and you got this channel, and suggesting that that the measured move is down here. So I honestly think at the minute you could make a case that puts you back down to these areas here, and that looks decent as well. Looks like a decent area on the monthly, down to 86.50 on the monthly. I think you could make that case for the dollar. So how you interact with this is going to be tricky. And look at the price action. Look at the price action that we've had today. Bottom there, back up to the high, down to the bottom, pretty much back up to the high. It's going to probably come back down here again. You would suspect. Looks to me like we're in this range. And there's been some really good ranges here with the dollar. Okay, they're sliding to the upside very, very slightly. But we do sort of it looks to me like we're just kind of caught in a band where we're kind of seeing these areas here as the high, and okay, looks like a pattern that's moving there as well. So ascending triangle again could break down, and we're only talking about the hourly here, so a little bit different. But this looks like we're at the top of a range to me. On this particular area. So
this is why the breakout could very well be good.
Yeah.
And if he's not a lame duck and he does actually say something, then he's going to set a trend for the next whatever month or so.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to catch the breakout.
Yeah. Difficult job for him today, really, isn't it? No, firstly,
extremely. Who wants to be in that position?
He obviously sort of like he's got to have a plan, which I'm sure he has, and then he's got to find a way to express himself in such a way that plan comes to fruition.
And it's not overt. It has to be. I don't know. What he's going to say is guesswork, so there's really no point in me saying, look, I think here's what's going to happen, because it doesn't mean anything. You can say three different scenarios, but my point is, whatever he says, if it is meaningful, it's going to drive the dollar, and it's going to drive it in a direction, and that direction will be the same for some time because of what he says, if it's not lame duck.
Yeah.
If it's lame duck cut and paste from the last, 4 February, then the market just does what it does. But
I wonder whether it will be, mate. I mean, he's got he's got form with that, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. The last one I wanted to just quickly look at and touch on was the Nasdaq. And again, I think the Nasdaq's also really interesting. If you want to trade Jerome Powell's speech in a way that pushes bond yields up, then I think the Nasdaq is really, really attractive for a short. And look at this one here. So we've just been talking about inverted head and shoulders patterns or whatever, working out to effectively provide the move in the same direction. This, to me, could potentially provide the move in the opposite direction. And even if we were just to kind of like look at this to bring us back down here to provide an inverted head and shoulders, so you're looking at getting back down to that right shoulder. If this is where today becomes really interesting. If we believe that Jerome Powell is going to push the dollar lower, then we want to be looking at gold, in my opinion. We want to be looking at the euro short, in my opinion, against the dollar. Maybe even the pound short against the dollar. If we think that the dollar is going to go long, yes, we can trade sorry, if we think that he's going to make the euro the dollar weaker, then we want to be looking at gold long. Sorry, and the Nasdaq long as well. Maybe the Russell 2000. But if we think that the dollar is going to be strengthened after the speech, then I wouldn't really want to go near gold, but I would definitely want some Nasdaq. You know, the Nasdaq as a short opportunity looks really good, just because we are at that inverted head and shoulders neckline, and these do tend to fail. So I'd be looking for, you know, if we're looking at you know, which patterns we'd need, I'd want to see this breakdown. I want to see that pattern breakdown, because that would take us away from these highs as well. It would take us away through that horizontal level, a breakdown and a retest of something around about the 13,000 level, and the Nasdaq for me would be an attractive short. And the great thing is that, you know, price action at this stage is sleepy, so you either take a gamble and try and get in before the speech, which wouldn't be a bad strategy as long as you're prepared to get run over here and still be right. You know, you could put a stop at the highs here, entering sort of somewhere in this area, probably at the higher band. You'd want it at the higher band, but entering somewhere in that area and see if you get that move. But knowing that what could actually happen is market goes up, takes you out, and then it plummets. But if you go in light enough, there's still a way to play that. You know, and you could play it while it's going up and taking you out. You could be placing another order under the lows there, with a new stop, and still get a decent move, probably a 2-3 to 1 to the downside. So there's different ways to interact with this, and you could still trade before the news, as long as you have a repeat trade after it. And I'm not suggesting by any stretch that you go long, only if you want to go short, because this is at our level of resistance. So it's in a sell zone. So there is a way to trade this short early, but you have to be prepared to get run over at least once. But in such a tight range with such gains on offer, that might well be worthwhile. Have they printed too much? What about inflation? Oh yeah, I mean, you know, they're going to want to inflate the whole thing away, aren't they? But
yeah, I don't think they have that in their psyche that they've printed too much. It's just their method.
Yeah,
they're the world champions, as I keep saying.
Yeah, and inflation it's only creeping back, isn't it? It's not really getting out of control at this stage. You know, I had a really good look into NFTs yesterday after the chat with Shukri. And I'm finding this whole, you know, this whole monetary system, the whole financial system, it's fascinating at the minute. You know, the fact that you've got products that you can go and buy really outside of the system. You know, you're looking at this stuff outside of the system. It does kind of suggest that that Jerome Powell and the like have got battles on multiple fronts. The Bank of Japan were talking about a cryptocurrency yesterday as well, and they're just not ready. They're not ready for it. They haven't done the tests on it that they needed to do, and I wonder whether they're going to be so late that that it's going to really kind of, you know, fall by the wayside and still have to kind of, you know, they're still going to end up competing in the same way with the likes of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's getting so woven into society now, and cryptocurrency is getting so woven into society now. I think that there's a potentially a huge mess which is about to erupt.
When you say it is getting woven into society, and I agree with you, the thought of it is the practicality of it. However, I mean, at the moment it's still digital flip flop as far as I can see. Whether it's actually gaining traction in world economies or in central bankers' mindsets, I'm sure it is there. It's in their mind without question. And the thing that would be in their mind is, how the hell do we defeat this?
Yeah.
And that's always going to be front and center of their agenda, I would have thought, because suddenly they've lost. If they lose control, then, you know, the whole ball game changes.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether they can defeat it. I mean, I wonder whether they need now to try and
If you can't beat them, join them. Yeah.
exactly, and that suggests that if you think that Bitcoin has got a market cap of $1 trillion, then they're going to have to pay somebody a pretty sum to be able to, effectively buy Bitcoin and start using Bitcoin or whatever as an asset class themselves, governments or Federal Reserves or whatever to do that. But it does take away, and this is the scenario. This is the dangerous thing to do with this all, is that the way the blockchain technology is set up, it does away with central banks.
Mm-hmm.
So forget the dollar collapsing. Central banks might be. I mean, there's no way they can be redundant, because there's so many more parts of the economy than that can be controlled by Bitcoin or whatever else, because people have to buy houses and buy things that the government will somewhere along the line be able to track. But there are things behind, there are things going on sort of, underground, if you like, that they just can't, they can't get involved with tracking, and they can't make taxes on, they can't make money on. So they've got to figure out a way that they can pull in taxes and pull in money while allowing people to use blockchain technology.
Challenge, isn't it?
It really is, mate. It really is. But blockchain technology is, I mean, it's here. It's already here. It's already.
That's not going to go away. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because it is such a great idea.
Yes, it is.
But how and who can is, if that is controllable, and they're saying it's not, right?
Yeah.
Then we are, as we keep saying, we're in a paradigm shift right now. If that's not controllable, and we do enter a decentralized finance system, as the blockchain people and the Bitcoin people and the crypto people would have us believe, and I've got no reason to think they're wrong. But I still think there's going to be some hell of a fight by central bankers to actually stop this happening. Well, like, got no idea what that looks like.
Oh, mate, do you know? I think it's a fascinating dynamic, because the central bankers are just one piece of the puzzle. When you look at all these cryptocurrencies that are being released, they are numerous. All the stuff that is coming out, and it's because one particular system, in a way, isn't able to solve everything. So you get another thing that sort of says, well, actually, you're solving that, but I'll solve this. So I'll invent a cryptocurrency which makes sure that that part of the market can be sorted out, and we can effectively you'll have to kind of all tag it on. But the central bank aspect is just one factor. The fiat currency, if you like, is just one factor in this whole thing, because you still need to get paid by a company. So ultimately, any companies that are in the country I would have thought it wouldn't be too difficult to regulate how they pay their workers, and it might be that tax is shifted to the company before, rather than to I mean, I don't know. It's just so broad, isn't it? How it's all done. It's actually it's giving me a headache.
I have no idea, absolutely no idea how they're going to work it out. But to my mind at the moment, it's by the rumor.
And I'll tell you what, mate. Yes, it is. And I looked into NFTs yesterday, and most of it is absolute crap. It's just rubbish. What? It really, really is.
You saw my painting yesterday?
I did see your painting yesterday. Your painting is a whole lot better than a lot of the stuff that I saw yesterday. I can tell you that.
You wait till I add the color to it, man.
And most of it actually doesn't sell. This NFT thing is sort of like, when you're looking at going into this stuff, most of it actually, you could be left in the same situation as you could go out and sort of like go, oh well, the next big thing, the next sort of like thing that's going to happen is this as part of NFT. So you go out and buy this NFT, and then you're just left holding it because you're the only person in the world that wants it.
That's right.
It's got no tangible value. It's just like what you've decided to pay for it. You know, somebody's created it. You've gone, oh well, a non-fungible token of Lewis Hamilton is worth buying, and you go and buy it, and everybody else looks at it and goes, well, it's not much good. So
yeah, I don't really need that.
Shukri is so necessary here because he's going out and learning what non-fungible tokens are actually value and what ones are just going to be utter crap, and then most of them will be.
Well, as soon as I saw NFT, I thought someone was swearing at me, frankly.
Yeah.
I better address some things because we're going to get out of here
yes.
before. I think it's Lenka comes on after us on a Wednesday. I'm not sure.
I think you might be right.
And of course, the man himself, Shukri, is at is 8 o'clock. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions. And Jaira, yesterday I didn't answer your question, or it wasn't really a question. You told us that you were already in Euro Aussie, and of course, I got into Euro Aussie myself. How did you manage to deal with that? I don't know where you got in, to be honest, but all that happened to us is we got in here on this bar. Our TP1 was just below that yellow line, I think. So we got TP1 with 5 pips to spare, and then it just disappeared. I don't know how you got on. You got out with a small profit. Okay, cool. It's kind of still there for me, but I don't see a way in right now. I don't think I see a way in right now. Double cross of the daily pivot. Worcester. Tough to trade, although it was a new high. That would have been tradable. Not that I'm trading at that point, but it's there. Anyway, that was one of those, and I'm going to answer your questions now. Pound Aussie on the 4-hour chart. Do I think it can come down and form an inverted head and shoulders and then go long? Look, that's entirely possible, but what I see is a structural breakdown. So this descending channel is now broken down, and not unimportant is the fact that we've also closed above the weekly pivot. The problem, of course, is this line I'm about to put on the chart. That is fairly substantial resistance that we're at currently. And if I look at this chart, I see double top, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, potential lower high. So I'm a little bit confused at this point. Well, I'm not confused because I can see both cases, but we're at the right point of the argument here because we have crossed the weekly pivot. If I were to get a bear bar now that came back across the weekly pivot, retested the trend line, or even the monthly pivot, then I'm pretty confident I could place a long here, get some profit in the bank before I hit that level. And as you say, if it came down even further and gave us the inverted head and shoulders here, it's not my favorite, I've got to say. And the reason is it's, to me, out of context. I like to see head and shoulders or inverted head and shoulders at the bottom, not mid-range. And to me, this is middle of the range. The range being, if I go to the daily chart, in here somewhere, maybe even here somewhere. So I'm not seeing that as important to me. And if I go even bigger picture, yes, I see the fact that, and I've been trying to get long this, as you know. No, I don't see anything to negate that. But again, to me, the context is not looking for inverted head and shoulders. It doesn't mean that it won't play out, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this structure to be the dominant structure. So if I get a retest here, that tells me that this retracement is over, if you like, and we're potentially going to new highs. So that's what I'm looking. And again, if I go back to that bigger picture, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for big base, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. So smaller time frames giving me the opposite, but that's a beautiful retracement on that. and therefore I'm still bullish. So if you do see that inverted head and shoulders, I think maybe it's probably worth following. The other one, pound Kiwi, we're still in that trade, have been for goodness knows how long now, 2 weeks. We've come back and retested our entry, which is good. And we've got a very, very similar scenario here, except that the double top is a little bit less dependable, I would have thought. That big bar there is suggesting to me that it could have been an exhaustion bar, no question. But we haven't really done too much since then. So the market hasn't reversed, certainly not in spades. The problem we've got with this one is that we haven't closed above the weekly pivot. We failed to close above the top of the range. So the potential here to come back to the daily pivot even today, I think, is very high. So in that regard, I'd say you may well be on the money. So if that's the level you're talking about in here, if that's going to be your left shoulder, then I can totally see that happening. Absolutely can. The problem you would then have is we've come off the top, we may be headed back to the bottom. So, you know, there's nothing there crystal clear to me. Pound yen short on H1 looks a better bet. Have I got a pound yen? I don't think I have. We can fix that. Pound yen should be up here somewhere. Oh, that's because I'm down here. Pound Swissy, pound yen, it's got to be here somewhere. That's weird. Am I going past it? No pound yen. There it is. Okay. One hour chart, short. Okay, let me have a look at that. How would I analyze this? I would go, okay, we've got a range in here. So let's put that in. I better hurry up because Angel will get very anxious. Understandably so, because we can waffle on here. I'd be looking for a short. I agree with that because we've come off the top. But I'd be looking for a lower high before I did. The H1 charts, tell you what would be interesting if I could see a false break forming there. And I can. So I'm more inclined on the 30-minute chart, Lewis, to be with you under here. Stop loss above the bar, but it has to be a bull bar for me. So I need it to close up here somewhere. Is there a best case scenario? Probably there. If it were to close, you know, at or near that level, I think you'd be well entitled to go short underneath it, because that would be a pretty decent old false break. Untested daily pivot. So there's a profit target, bottom of the range. Yeah, why not? I see that totally clearly. Right, couple of things. I hope that helps Jaira with those pound Kiwi and pound Aussie. Couple of things. I do have an order. I spoke about this, dollar Sing. Shorts on the daily chart. And I'm playing this bar here. I'll go a bit tighter so you can actually see it. I'm playing this bar here. And what I'm really looking for is this level that's been rejected, right? So it's been broken. This is a retest of that horizontal level. So I'm looking to play off that. And for phase 1, phase 2, looking for a phase 3 here for the short. May not go beyond that level, but if we can get in here on a smaller time frame, I think it's probably worthwhile. Price action is dodgy at best because you've got high test bar here, rejection here, high test bar here, high test bar here. But if you analyze this from the way I do, and trend is really not easy here on this chart because of, you know, the rangy nature of it. So, you know, have we got a bear trend? Have we got a bull trend? I would tend to suggest that we don't have a trend. For that reason, I'm happy to look at one of my favorite plays, which is a key reversal bar followed by an inside bar. That's a key reversal bar because the high is higher than the previous day and it's closed on or near its low. Then you're followed by an inside bar, suggesting that there's a little bit of maybe tension rising here, and we will find a breakout of this area at some stage. Whether it's today, probably will because of FOMC, but I was trying to get ahead of the game here, ahead of the FOMC statement. I don't know that I would leave this in the market, frankly. If I go to bed and we haven't been triggered, I'd probably cancel the order because it's not a very big bar, and the chances of this going whipsaw and in and out are pretty strong. But if we're taken in and get to a TP1, or I might even take an early TP1 if I went to bed. Breakout trade. Here I've set it up. As I mentioned to you guys before, look at this doing exactly what I wanted it to do. Coming back off that low. I'm going to extend the range to there. This area is going to be exactly the same, however. I need price to be in that zone. So between DR1 and daily pivot, as the statement is announced. So if you're out of bed, which most of you probably won't be, that's going to be a little bit difficult for you. But I'd be more than willing to trade this long if price got above the daily pivot and then came back and retested that area. I think that's a clear false break of that support level, and we would be going back into the range of the week. So entry will be at 119.70 for the long. I'll just write this down. 119.70. That will also be the stop loss for the short. Entry for the short will be at 118.75. 118.75, which will also be the stop for the long. Now, how you deal with this? Got to have price in there, right, at the time of the announcement. 15 pips above, 15 pips below. That's the way I do it. TP1 is 1-to-1, and you take half off the table and do nothing else. You just bank half. Then, if price actually goes into trend, so let's say we break out of here long, and we go into trend, we're safe trading at TP1, which is 1-to-1. We do nothing else, leave the stop loss where it is. And if this does go into trend, takes out the new high, suddenly you're in real good shape. Also the same going in the opposite direction. So I hope that's understandable. That's exactly how I will trade it if I'm awake. And if I see price in that zone when I go to bed, I will probably get up and do that. But watch this, because this could well be a long euro dollar. Up above the daily pivot, back to retest it. Then you've got a clear false breakdown here, but do it on a 30-minute chart. Right, mate, I'm done. How about you?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah, I think we come back tomorrow to talk about oil. Reading some quite interesting things about oil. I think oil may well be topping out here, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Dollar strengthening could actually start a trend to the downside with oil as well. We might be at
so potential reversals on Bitcoin, potential reversals on oil.
Yeah, yeah. We need to look into those.
Dollar yen is also one. I'm not going to go there now, but I think dollar yen is a little bit overbought too. Powell will decide that one though.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks so much as always, guys. Thank you, mate, for
Cheers,
your company, and thanks to Angel as always. And we will see you in the morning.
Happy days. Thank you, everyone, and